We are backing up to YouTube right now.
Almost there. Okay, we're good.
Great. And we have the attendees entering. Ron Street, yes, thank you. All right, great. Excited to see all of you here. Really appreciate that. We're going to make the most of this hour. I appreciate the many of you who have signed up and are showing up for this very important conversation in our industry. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Amy Stair. I'm the CEO of Star Power, and I'm absolutely honored and thrilled that we have this amazing panel that's come together to give you some really important insights. So I'd like to just introduce all of you real quick. I'm going to start with Leslie, if I may. Leslie Ruda-Smith. Many of you will recognize her as our past president of the National Association of Realtors. I know we have some people on the call that are new to the industry. And so, Leslie, they may not have met you yet. Leslie actually is a real estate practitioner in this great state of Texas, and has been an incredible influence on our industry and served proudly all of us women in real estate as our female president of the NAR. So Leslie, thank you for agreeing to be here. I also would like to share that Leslie was just last week, along with Richard Waystack, who I'm about to introduce, at the President's Circle for the National Association of Realtors, and Leslie sat in private meetings with the past presidents and is going to share some information from that with us as well. So welcome, Leslie. Richard, many of you may recognize as our past president of the Residential Real Estate Council. Richard's in Massachusetts and has been in the industry for decades and was an incredibly thoughtful and compassionate leader at the RRC and brings some really interesting perspective. Thank you, Richard, for agreeing to be with us today. We have Alexis Bolin from Pensacola, Florida. I feel like this woman doesn't need an introduction, but by the rare possibility that someone on this call has never met Alexis, she has been a leader in pretty much every organization ever invented in real estate. She recently received the Mentor of the Year award from the Residential Real Estate Council. She has been a major influence in the growth of the Women's Council of Realtors. And she also happens to sell real estate, over 6,000 transactions now, I think, in her career down in little old Pensacola. So Alexis, thank you for joining us. She's also one of our Star Power stars, as is Leslie, as is, I'm excited to announce, Richard, who will be interviewed in August. And then where do I even start introducing Mr. Ron Garber? Ron is a personal friend of mine. He's a Star Power star. He has been successful in real estate with a team selling 250 to 300 transactions a year. He has retired, if you will, from that role and sits in Fortune 500 companies, lending, title. Ron is sitting at the heart of this industry and he's bringing a perspective that you guys maybe haven't even considered today that I think is vitally important to all of us moving forward. So having said all that, we are not going to be about slides today. We are going to be about content. And I want to bring these talented and amazing people forward. Leslie, you made a comment, and I want to make sure in our planning session that everyone on this call understands. None of us are attorneys, okay? We are not here giving legal advice. We are not here interpreting the law. We are here to do three things. First of all, we're here to help you find calm in the storm. A lot of realtors, quite frankly, are running around like chickens with their heads cut off right now, and there's no need for that. This is actually a very positive opportunity for our industry, and we're going to get into that. Mr. Waystack, you made a comment I'd like you to just address briefly, and that is ask your brokers. What did you mean by that?
Well, thankfully, we're 10 days from the announcement of the settlement. and most of the hysteria has calmed down. And if you're anywhere on social media, people are losing their heads over this. And we need to get the information from the right people. And if you're an agent working in the field, you need to talk to your broker, not listen to everything that's happening on social media. You know, and I'm going to right up front give a plug here for Star Power because I'm here as a member of Star Power for basically three reasons: to get information, for collaboration, and for validation. And I want to hear from the people who know what they're doing. And I'll give you a great example of that. Last month, we were in Las Vegas at the RRC celebration. And there were vendors there, and there was a relatively new product. And there were 15 to 20 members of Star Power there. And they all went together to see what was happening with that product. And they learned about it, and they collaborated to see if it would work in their industry or not, in our industry or not. It was just tremendous. It was a mastermind within a mastermind. It was tremendous. And that's the value to me of Star Power. But we need to get rid of the hysteria that's happening in the marketplace right now. Talk to people who know what is going on. And again, we're not attorneys, but we can hear from people like Leslie and Alexis and Ron who have the pulse of what's happening in the industry. But don't go to your friends to talk about it because they have no idea. Most people haven't read the 108-page settlement. But talk to your brokers and find the information from the appropriate parties.
Thank you for that so much. Mr. Garber, forgive me, you guys, I just call him Garb. He's had his name shortened in my life over 30 years. You bring to this table a perspective well beyond just the real estate agents. And I would like you to touch on this. You've said to me this is a far more complex issue than just what's impacting the agents. Would you speak to that, please?
Well, I'm proud of being, in the real estate industry as a practitioner for years and years and years, starting where I did 6 transactions and moved to 12 to 25 to 50 and grew a team and grew a business. And, to your point, I was able to exit that and sell my franchise, sell my team, which I'm very proud of. But it allowed me to see things and move to a different level of consulting and being a strategist and so I've had a second career. The second career around strategic consulting has been very interesting to me because I realized sitting on the other side is how important the other industries have become as I sit over there. The mortgage industry is critical to the success of real estate. The title settlement industry is incredibly important. And what I would tell you is that more than ever before, people need to stand back and say, it's to Richard's point, do I have a broker that can convey it? And you need to ask some hard questions in this marketplace. And I think at all levels I'm speaking for leadership. Leadership has a real responsibility at all levels. And this is leadership within mortgage, title, real estate, all and up and down. It starts with great leadership. And so I enjoy this opportunity of being a consultant versus a coach that a lot of that you are. And there is a definition between what is a coach and what is a strategic consultant. I don't tell people what to do, but I give them a strategic layout based on data and consultation for them to make good decisions. So there's a lot to talk about in terms of both coaching, consulting to get this thing right.
Thank you, Ron. Alexis. We can always count on Alexis to be a straight shooter. You said to me, these people need to be strong articulating their value. And do you know what you're worth? You want to add to that?
Well, definitely. I think in our world, too many of us are afraid to address what we get paid. And that's why you have so many agents racing around now like Chicken Little and the sky is falling, because now they actually have to explain to a buyer how we get paid and explain to a buyer why they need to pay me to represent them. So now is the time for them to hone in on their scripts and dialogues and make a list of their values and be able to articulate that to the buyer or the seller as to why it's beneficial to have me versus somebody else represent them. So if we can just get to the point as a whole, because none of us on the screen have an issue with doing that, to where we can explain that and quit being ashamed of the fact that we earn a living. Doesn't bother me at all. I'll share a script with you right now. I get paid for what I know and what I know how to do. And in fact, I work for you for nothing until we get to the closing table, and then and only then do I get paid. There is no other industry where that happens. So really, you think you're taking a chance on me. I'm really taking a chance on you because I'm the one not getting paid until we close. So if that works for you, it'll work for me. So do we want to work together? It's all about trust. It's not about anything else. And Richard talks about this all the time. It's trust and relationships, period. Belly to belly, eyeball to eyeball. And you've got to get comfortable in your own skin with saying to somebody, this is how much I earn.
Thank you so much for that, Alexis. And it's a good time for me to remind everyone, we are recording this. So we're not going to be repeating scripts, for example. And for Pete's sake, when you've got these 4 together, you couldn't write fast enough to catch them all anyway. So this is being recorded. So just stay in the moment with us and let's move forward. What I'd like to do, if it's okay with you 4, is go ahead and just address the 5 items, the 5 main items that people need to know from the settlement itself. And we'll talk about those. I said earlier, goal 1 is to calm everyone down. And goal 2 is just to summarize what's in that settlement. And then let's, after that, discuss what we need to do with that information. So number 1, buyer representation agreements will be required. Now, remember, the DOJ hasn't signed off on this yet. So we're speaking in terms of if everything goes together, which we have no reason to expect it wouldn't, that mid-July, some undefined date, but we know it's like mid-July, we will be all required in this industry to counsel a buyer and have them sign that agreement prior to showing them houses. Any of you want to weigh in on that?
Amy,
I
if I
will.
could, we're in a non-mandatory state in Massachusetts. And I work for a company that is based in Connecticut where there is mandatory buyer agency. And a lot of folks in my market, I'm here in Cape Cod in Massachusetts, have never used buyer agreements before. So it's new to a lot of folks. And this is where the education comes in for a lot of people. And I go to my good friend and the queen of scripts and dialogues, Miss Alexis Boland, that how do you speak to your clients? How do you create that? And it's imperative, whether this happens in July or next month, we need to prepare now to learn how to do those buyers. People, those agreements should have been used for years. Most have used it. Many do not. In my market, it is not widely accepted. So it's a huge learning curve for people in our market. Great time to get some education and learn how to do it and get those scripts and dialogues and start using them.
I agree with Richard.
Oh, go ahead, Alexis.
I agree with Richard in that, they've always been available. We have them here in Florida. In fact, Florida right now, we're deemed to be transaction brokers. So we don't, quote, represent either party. We can, those forms are available, but nobody does it. I shouldn't say nobody. Most don't, particularly in my marketplace in Pensacola. But, when buyer brokering first came out in the 80s, the Star Power Stars were the first ones to jump on that. And we put together at one of our meetings, buyer broker agreements. And I came back from the meeting and sat with my broker and voila, we had one. And I still have that one from 20 years ago or more. Each of the states, if they don't have one, are out scrambling to get one together with their attorneys and their executive line. And that will be coming down the pike for all of you to use. But what you got to get in the back of your head is this is no different than a listing agreement. We've been going to a seller with paperwork forever. So now we just go to the buyer with some paperwork. And the easiest way for me to explain it is, if you haven't heard on the news, the rules are changing. And so somebody somewhere has now legislated that you and I have to enter into a written agreement. I mean, I was doing fine before this because I didn't expect you to date around. And so I didn't need you to sign anything. But unfortunately, today we're going to need to do this and then go through the process with them. Explain to the buyer up front, it's not you, it's not the state of Florida, it's the whole nation. And this is how we work. And I just don't see that to be a real big issue. I think people need to get out of the scared arena and get to where they understand the paperwork, what every line means, how they're going to get paid, how long this is going to be. And if you have a reluctant buyer, like we've had reluctant sellers before, you go to a for sale by owner, you get a one-time showing signed and you go ahead and show the house. You can get a one-time showing signed for a buyer any day of the week. So if a buyer says, Alexis, I like you, but I don't want to be stuck with you. Great. You want to see this house? Sign this paper. We'll move forward. And it's just about that simple.
I'd like to add to that. I actually have one of my sons is shopping for a house right now. His first realtor, which they hit the blue button on our friend Zillow and got an agent who had bought a lead and was never explained by our agency, never asked to sign an agreement. They did not move forward with that agent. They got a professional agent. And the first thing that agent did was say, before we look at a single house, let's sit down and talk about the whole process. Let me explain to you how we work. And here's our professional agreement with you to represent you. So it's, I got licensed in 1992. We did buyer agency agreements. I see Kathy LaFuse is here on this webinar. She was in my office when I first started in real estate. That was just what we were taught to do. So I don't want to belabor the point. If the DOJ signs off on this, and I'll say that multiple times today, you're just going to have to do it. So to Alexis's point, get good at articulating your value.
Amy, may I also add, when I got a real estate license in 1978, everybody represented the seller. We had no offer of compensation in MLS, but we didn't have any issue with it. We weren't running around saying, oh, woe is me. If I show broker A's listing, am I going to get paid? No, because our broker went to broker A and said, hey, let's cut a deal here. And this is how we'll work. And I'll pay you so many apples if you pay me so many apples. And the brokers had written agreements. Now, I'm not an attorney, and this is not a legal thing we're on here, unless it's going to kill me for saying this. But I believe that it may come down to the brokers getting together in your local area and saying, if you give me X apples, I'll give you X apples. And they sign a contractual agreement to work together, right? In the event the seller is agreeing to allow X apples to be paid. I firmly believe that there's just so much that the government can do to us in this world. And I think that they cannot stop the businesses, meaning our brokers, from figuring out how they want to do business. Because to me, that's a restraint of trade. So I've said my legal stuff and I'm going to be nice.
Okay. Ron.
So I boiled things down. There's not a lot of categories of really the things that we need to do. It's lead generation, it's lead follow-up, technology, marketing, working with buyers, working with sellers. And under that, there's some questions, but it's not actually more complicated than that. And if I pick marketing, knowing your unique value proposition is probably the best one, because everything else, right, falls into that one. And forever, I was thinking about what Alexa was saying, we got business long years ago based on referrals and past clients, right? That's never, if you run a good business for decades and decades, it's always going to be your past clients. But don't forget, again, my overarching is it's not just real estate, but it's the industry. So your mortgage professional can be your greatest referral source, right? They talk to people before they buy a house. So make sure that the folks that you're using for ancillary services, mortgage and whatever, they're the ones that are going like, oh boy, have you had experience working with this agent or this brokerage firm? They are unbelievable. And I've had situations that I've seen where somebody will take an offer based on, oh, you're financing with Joe or Betty. I trust Joe and Betty. They are fantastic, or they know programs that others don't know. So again, it is about both asking for referrals, but working with past clients, but making sure your affiliate partners really are your great advocates. I think those are important points.
Thank you, Ron. I do want to let you guys know that I am seeing your questions coming in. Some of them I'm going to go ahead and address in the moment, but in order for us to get the most valuable information to you guys throughout this call, I may defer some of them till the end of the call. So rest assured that I am seeing them. Leslie, I'm going to go to you, and then I have 2 questions I want to throw out to all of you.
Thanks, Amy. You know, I grew up in real estate and I've seen a lot of changes, and I've seen realtors who don't like change, which seems to be the majority of us. I can remember when we had MLS books and the earth was, the world was coming to an end, that we didn't have them anymore, and we've survived. Look at us. We're still here. Please know that there is a ton of education out there. The National Association of Realtors is offering the accredited buyer representative for free. You can go to nar.realtor to get more information on that. But I can't tell you how many things I have seen. I can't even keep up with all of it. But the one thing I will say that I've seen a lot of that is very disturbing, and I know it's not from this audience, but it is antitrust waiting to happen. Instead of talking about apples like Alexis did, they're actually talking about numbers and percentages. And folks, that's what got us in this situation. They feel that we are colluding. Colluding is part of antitrust. It's amazing that these people were able to get a real estate license and they don't know any better, because in my market and the company I'm with, that would never happen. I've seen people walk out of meetings when anyone even breathes anything that is remotely like antitrust. But instead of saying anything, I tried to message them behind the scenes to give them an opportunity to edit what they just posted. But the ones that are doing it more than anyone are actually realtors that are trying to get business. And I noticed it the most on the Nextdoor app. Sadly, it was kind of entertaining over the weekend, but y'all might just look at what is going on in your area, because it's important to note. But I would also not get on there like we are the authority, because that's not going to fly real well with people either. But there's a lot out there, so I hope you'll look, especially at nar.realtor. Thanks.
We are going to give you a list of links at the end of this call, so you will see those when you get the recording. In addition, we're putting together just a one page on the site that will have links to all the things. You guys, if you haven't read the 4-page summary that NAR put out about the settlement, y'all need to do that. A lot of the questions I'm seeing come in relate to, well, what about this scenario? What about that scenario? Start with the law. Start with the actual language of what's being proposed. And there are a lot of questions, so you guys know just about how is this going to work in this scenario and that scenario. I'm going to throw just a couple of them out, but I think it's important that we get through all 5 of these items from the summary of the settlement, and then get into, I think we all see this. We as realtors are part of the problem right now. We're reading the headlines. We're not doing our homework to understand. So you need to get away from reading. I think CNN was the first one to come out to say 6% commission is gone forever. That's not even, none of it is valid. 0 of that statement is valid. Budge Husky wrote and did an exceptional article on this that you all should be reading. So let me just address a couple questions here. And you guys may or may not know, and again, we're not attorneys, so you guys are going to hear me be very redundant today with 2 things. We're not attorneys, and you need to do your homework. Are the buyer agency agreements only for Realtor members, or are they for all agents? Do we know, any of you know, if that was specifically addressed in the language?
Leslie might know that.
It was my understanding it is for realtors. But one thing to keep in mind for those of you who are from areas where the MLSs are not part of the associations, as in they're, have a piece of the action. There are states that they're owned, privately or by brokers. So it's different. I know a state that they have more licensees than realtors. And I know that I know a state that has it where you pay a certain amount to MLS based on your production. So it's different all over the country, but I think we're going to see a lot of different things. The other thing to let you know is that in some states, you do not have to be a member of your realtor association to have access to MLS.
Richard. Thank you, Leslie.
One of the items in the settlement, and I've heard a lot of people, NAR this, NAR that, I'm going to leave NAR. The worst time to absolutely leave NAR is right now, because you're covered under the settlement as a realtor. If you do not belong to NAR, you do not. And so if a non-realtor wants to do what they want to do, I'm covered as a member of the National Association of Realtors. And I'm also covered by that code of ethics, one of the main reasons that I subscribe and am a member of NAR. So now's not the time to leave, folks.
No, and we're
But-
going to talk about that towards the end of this session. I've asked Leslie to just address some things in regards to that. We get emotional. We all get emotional and we make emotional decisions. And what would you tell your clients? They need to deal in facts, data, and logic. So we're going to do some of that today. Okay, one more question I wanted to throw out there. Again, these are about how do you work with buyers. One thing is that buyer agency agreements require to actually to write in for the buyer's benefit the amount that you're going to be compensated if you're not being compensated from the listing. So how do you address that when you don't know what the co-op fee is going to be?
Well, I think, again, they've got to decide what their value is in the marketplace. Excuse me. There may not be a co-op fee. So I think they need to get a mindset, everybody right now, that there will be no co-op fee and work from there. So if there's no co-op fee, which is basically my understanding of where this lawsuit is going, they're pushing the fee onto the buyer, which they think that's where it belongs. Although if the buyer didn't bring money, the seller wouldn't have any. So, that's another whole discussion. But go at it with the mindset that you go at it with the seller. Nobody's paying the fee on the seller side but the seller. And so if you think nobody's paying the fee on the buyer side but the buyer, then you need to discuss that with the buyer. And there are various ways in which you can get the buyer fee paid for. Number one would be, I think we're going to have sellers who will agree to give the buyer some concessions to assist with closing costs or any other fees that they may have to incur in the transaction. That's a discussion we're all going to need to have with the seller, because it's my belief, excuse me, that this lawsuit does not preclude a seller from making a concession to a buyer. So the other thing that I would strongly suggest, and I think we're in this pickle because of this, the word commission needs to go away. We are professionals. My documentation for listings and buyer brokerage says professional fee. I tell the sellers, we don't charge a commission, you're in luck. When they say, how much commission are you going to charge me? I go, you're in luck, I don't have one of those. We charge a professional fee. Commission's what you pay to Sotheby's when they sell your artwork, or when you sell your antique car at auction, whatever. They need to get away from that. And so they need to get a mindset that they just need to talk about how much they expect to get paid, regardless of what's going on the seller side of the transaction.
Amy, and a reminder
Yes.
to people, once they sign that contract, one of the tenets of the settlement is they cannot get paid greater than what they have stated in their buyer agency contract.
Right. So
Define your
don't think you're
value.
going to do the builder bonus thing. That is not a strategy. Get clear on what your value is and be at peace with it.
Amy, you can,
Yep.
excuse me, you can get the builder bonus fee. You
Okay.
just write that into the buyer broker agreement that in the event that they pick new construction. And
No,
the
I'm saying, Alexis, we can't steal their tactic and use it as realtors. You can't get a commission and get a bonus That's not a strategy for realtors to ask list sellers to do. New
Okay, I'm
construction,
confused.
yes, you can get paid on.
Okay.
Ron,
I got a comment. So, you know, everybody should have had the honor to be with us on Friday when we had our pregame warm up here, because I learned a ton from Friday before. It's a seminar nobody got to hear. But when I was listening to Leslie, and I'm sorry that more people didn't get to hear that, because as a spokesperson for how she loves and believes in NAR and what they do, it was really a pleasure to listen to her. But I also wanted to tag on to that and to say that if you state organizations, and I was actually really surprised when I did the data of between California, Texas, and Florida. I think you'd be surprised if you had to rank them, which one has got more people. I was actually wrong. California is third, and there's others that they're bigger, right, than what California is. But every state has got great stuff. CAR has got incredible tools. Every state's got incredible tools, right? So if you start looking at just a basic one that everybody uses, like a zip form, right? It's a basic tool, but there are such incredible products and tools that are offered on a state level, right? State by state, but there's also the MLSs. I don't know if you know this, but a lot of the MLSs have actually come together and unified, right? And so what you'll see is that some of the biggest of MLSs have come together, and they have products and services that they have put together. And it's amazing. There's East Coast, West Coast, but the products and services that are offered not only by NAR, but state organizations, but also the combination of different MLSs, phenomenal. So there's some resources right in front of you that you should just go look at. And a lot of them are free and a lot of them are discounted, but they're tremendous. Because the MLSs knew that they had to fill the void to offer some good stuff. So you should look at that.
it's excellent. I think people don't look at their resources, and Leslie at the end is going to give us several resources at the NAR level. Ron, you make such a great point about the states. Okay, we do have a lot of comments just about scenarios, and so we will loop back to some of those. You know, I know that we all have a concern for first-time home buyers, VA and FHA buyers. We're going to get to that, but let's get through this settlement, the 5 points real quick. The second one is offers of cooperative compensation cannot be made on the MLS. That's very straightforward. Can't be there anymore. Should the DOJ approve this deal, all MLSs will have to remove that data. Mid-July is what it looks like. It's not happening today, but you should just go ahead and get in the right mindset about it. Alexis.
But there still may be a field in your MLS for seller concessions to the buyer. So
Yep. So again,
don't forget the
Richard's
use
point,
of that.
Yeah, to Richard's point, talk to your broker, talk to your local association. Everybody's figuring it out together at the same time. Okay. The number 3 is offers of cooperative compensation may be made off the MLS. And so, you know, email, newsletter, calls, texts, all those great things. Not showing time as it's fed by the MLS, right, Richard? We talked about that. I think you all need to be thinking about, who am I using for syndication? Are they pulling from MLS data? In which case, you can't stick it there because that's a violation. The other thing I want to just mention that we discussed on Friday is documentation. If you have a phone call with the co-op agent and they tell you a certain amount and you don't get it documented anywhere, and then you get to the point of offer and find out it's a different number, well, that's on you. So get your stuff in writing. Number 4 then follows 2 and 3, which is brokers can publish offers of cooperative compensation for their own listings on their own websites. So we'll see how that plays out. People are already asking for samples. Again, guys, DOJ hasn't approved it. It doesn't go into effect until July. I'm sure there are plenty of agents. I know there are in our network who are going to be proactive about this and start putting it on their sites, but it's not in effect yet. So yes, will some people start doing it? Will Star Power share what the stars are doing? Yes, because that's what we always do at Star Power. Best practices from best agents. Alexis?
Keep in mind what Richard said, though. We're talking about ourselves as agents, and most of us on here as realtors hold a broker's license. I'm not the broker owner, but I hold a broker's license in Florida. You need to talk to your broker. You just don't go rogue and decide to put something out there. What I'm thinking is our brokerage is going to have a policy. And then we're going to know what we can and can't do. Our state is going to have a policy of some sort. We're going to know what we can and can't do, because don't forget that what we publish on our websites is also up to the scrutiny, not only of NAR, but in my case, FAR, Florida Realtors, and also our code of ethics. So when we're posting on our websites, that's advertising, we need to make sure that we comply with all advertising rules, from National Association of Realtors right on down to your state and your brokerage. So when we're giving you this information, please don't go back and say, Alexis said it was okay to do it. I'm not your broker. And so,
Alexis is not an attorney, nor is she all your
Correct.
managing broker.
So I find that too often now, well, I went on this webinar and Richard said this, or, oh my God, Leslie, she said I could do this. No, we're giving you a big bird's eye view. You go talk to the powers that be where you live. Sorry about that.
Thank you for that, Alexis. No, let's not be like clients who are looking to hear what they want to hear and not what they need to hear. Let's stay in the need to hear space. Ron?
Here's a need to hear. So going back to being a data guy, I do track and look at data from a lot of different places and a lot of different sources. And something that just came up, which I know is increasing and will only get bigger and bigger, is pocket listings. If things don't go on the MLS, right, and they go somewhere else, how much business is going to start to be done that is off the MLS that you can't see and track, right? So it's going to be fascinating to see, going forward, what is the posture about, do people put everything on the MLS? Do they put some things on the MLS? Do they give themselves more time to double end stuff? So there's a different, you got to look at how are certain groups going to do certain things. But I would tell you that if I was going to predict, there's going to be more things that are not on the MLS, and that percentage of deals off the market is going to go up. And then also, I think you got to really look at some of the intention of some of the folks out there that are kind of outside of our industry, which are the co-stars and the Zillows, and what are their thoughts about how they want to play or be connected to our industry. Is it cooperative? Is it to control? And so you can't forget to look at some of the folks out there, and what their initiatives and agendas are as well as we go forward. I think those are critical things to at least keep in your mind.
I have
Absolutely.
I have a question for Leslie, if I may. So how Ron brought up a perfectly good idea there, because it's already happening. And so we went to clear cooperation, Miss Leslie. And now I think clear cooperation is going to go away. So address that for us.
Well, I have seen things that say that, yes, it is going to go away, but I have not seen anything that confirms that, nor have I heard that from our chief legal officer. So until I know that factually, I don't want to say that. Again, I'm not an attorney.
But don't forget, in this discussion, we still have a fiduciary to our clients. And in this entire discussion of going off market, staying on market, we need to do what's in the best interest of our clients. And MLS is still right now the best interest of my client to be out there. So we need to be careful as we talk about that. And don't forget, we all still subscribe to that code of ethics.
And it's important to not just do that, but you've got to make sure that your sellers understand that. If you are not going to put it in MLS, they need to understand the potential consequences of not doing that.
100%.
So I think that's very important. And I've seen agents end up in lawsuits because they have talked a seller into an off-market listing and they could have gotten a higher price. I have one right across the street from me that happened.
I just did that this weekend. And the seller chose not to go on MLS, so I asked them to sign a statement stating so. So I just want you all to understand that we are now more than ever in a CYA world. And so if the seller's choosing not to go on MLS, have that in writing, that they made the choice not to do that. And then they don't come back to you later on after their uncle in St. Louis told them that they could have got another 30,000 for their house. And then that protects you because they have signed something saying, I understand the benefits of multiple listing and exposure for my home, and I have decided not to go that route, whatever you want to do.
And I would also add to that too. Don't forget the army in the streets are your key partners, right? Their title, their mortgage, their closing, their escrow, their everybody that's around you. They can also speak exactly what you said on behalf of you, and so they can also put an asterisk there saying, you know, this is really important. Why? So make sure that everybody around you that is part of how you do business and how you speaks your language of how important it is for you to do everything, because they are actually an extension of, you know, of what you say. It's kind of the doctor nurse thing. Everybody's consistent. Look at the same file. They say the same thing, and it keeps it as a combined unit. I think that's what we need to do, is be connected together so we all speak that language.
100%. A lot of the questions that are now pouring in are real world scenarios. And so we're going to get into that. I want to get to number 5. Any of you who have said chat is disabled, you need to use the Q&A instead of the chat to ask your questions. A lot of questions around what's going to happen to VA, what's going to happen for the buyer who can't afford the closing costs. Let me just state, and we'll get to this later, and I've heard this from all of you, this change does not mean that a seller will never agree to pay a commission to a buyer representative again, or a professional fee. Forgive me, Alexis, for that word. You have to get better at articulating benefits to those sellers so that they understand why it's in their best interest, and we're going to get into that. Question about buyer agency versus dual agency versus transaction broker. We have to assume that some buyers will start calling listing agents directly and want to be represented by them. And that creates some scenarios. What do you guys want to speak to that? And then we're going to get to number 5 on this summary.
I had that happen very recently and explained that Florida law doesn't allow me to do that. So I want to go back to the way you work with buyers and sellers is dictated by the law in your state. So if your state allows you to be a dual agent, you can be a dual agent. I can't do that in the state of Florida. So I think it's extremely important for you to get your agency agreement signed up front with buyers and sellers. And mine is quite easy. I show them the transaction broker notice. I go over all the little legislative things on there, like I have to be honest, and who in Tallahassee is going to be that, and just explain this is not my choice. This is a state thing, and so I need you to acknowledge that you understand that this is how the state has dictated how I can work with you, and I don't have a problem with it. So go to what your state dictates, and that's what you have to do. After this ruling is approved, your state may dictate something different, which I do believe Florida may be working on now.
Ron and then Richard.
Okay, there's a lot of really smart, you know, business folks out there in the real estate sector, right? And some of them have gone from agents to become teams, to become expansion teams, going across states, right? They're very bright and talented folks. And they're also good at scripts and dialogues as well. So you got to understand, right, that everybody out there has got to have a USP that actually covers them legally per state. But if you do have that opportunity where you can do dual agency, and the script is, you know, you're better because buyer side, seller side, it's all under one umbrella and we have it all together. So you've got to be prepared to talk about, why is it that I, as an individual agent, an individual proprietor, is just as competent and whatever to do, because I have a system model that has everything together versus that. So you got to be really comfortable to understand that there's going to be people coming at it from this side. I'm the best because I'm big, and I'm the best because I'm special and unique and all. So you got to be really clear with buyer's agency, but buy side, sell side wrapped under one thing, or why it's better. You got to be really clear, because these are all scripts and dialogues, and they play state by state. You got to be really clear with how you play, because there's a lot of them playing different ways.
Okay, let me just get number 5. Richard, go ahead, and then we'll get number 5 on the table.
Real briefly, I belong to a marketing group, the Cape Cod Group here at William Ravis, and we do not practice dual agency. But you got to go back to your broker. What is your company policy, number one? And we've had a situation, one of my team members, John, had a client who came and said, I want to buy from you as a listing agent. He had to have that documentation, and our attorney has advised that says, I understand I am an unrepresented buyer, and with documentation behind that, because the eyes of not just our associations, but the eyes of DOJ are still on all of us right now. We're not immune to it. So it's getting in writing. What's your policy? Ask your broker.
And I would carry that over to, there's a question in here in the Q&A, but also one that I got on a Zoom last week around E&O insurance. First question from that Zoom was, will my E&O insurance cover if I, for whatever reason, agree to not take compensation on a transaction? Now, there are plenty of you on this call who have done that over the years for a family member or a longtime client who was in crisis, have decided to waive your compensation. You need to check with your E&O company on that. We're not experts on each individual E&O, so you need to ask them if this is a scenario, and specific to the question in the Q&A, a buyer who wants to rep themselves. Do we have a fiduciary? We do have a fiduciary responsibility to the seller, but what does our E&O cover in that situation? You got to talk to the E&O company and find out. There's no blanket answer to that question. Let me get to number 5, because it ties into a lot of what we're talking about. And I've seen some questions in the Q&A around what qualifies as documentation. Number 5 in the summary is that agents must make commission disclosures in writing anywhere compensation appears, and keyword anywhere, including if you send a closing statement or a settlement sheet and then you call to review that with your seller. This phrase, broker commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. It's already in the listing agreement. I think the buyer agency agreements that are all in the process of being revised will include that language, but realize that there are times when you're discussing compensation with people that don't fall into those 2 documents where you must make that disclosure again. Not because you're asking someone the day before closing when you're going over their settlement sheet to renegotiate. You simply are getting the language in there that has been proposed in this settlement. So those 5 will be on the summary page, but just for the several people that asked, or quick recap, number 1 was buyer representation agreements are required if the DOJ signs off on this. Number 2, offers of cooperative compensation cannot be made on the MLS. Number 3, offers of cooperative compensation may be made off the MLS. 4, brokers can publish offers of cooperative compensation for their own listings on their own websites. Again, be aware of where you're aggregating your data. And then 5, agents must make commission disclosures. Now, I want to, if you guys will indulge me, I'd like to jump into a few scenarios. And let me just start by cleaning up the confusing things I said about new construction. We had 2 different things happening at the same time. Alexis was referring specifically to new construction. My comment was simply that some people had said their workaround for if the amount that needed to be paid to them was different than what the cooperative compensation was being offered, that they might approach it like a builder approaches it and just stack on a bonus, and then they wouldn't be calling it cooperative compensation, they'd be calling it a bonus. You guys don't start down the road of sneaky workarounds. It puts an ick in my stomach. I know it puts an ick in the stomach of everybody on this panel. Don't take the creative route that gets you in trouble. Let's work together and collaborate on creative ways that are totally within the letter of the law. There are several people, let's jump on this one to get into the scenarios. The buyer agency agreement requires a specific amount. What if somebody is offering, the seller is offering compensation that exceeds what you put in your buyer agency agreement? I'm not quite sure I understand what the question is there. I think the real question is about the disparity between what you signed with the buyer on the buyer agency agreement and what ends up happening when you get to the closing table. Alexis.
Your buyer broker agreements should specify that. For example, you agree to 2 apples with the buyer agent and the seller is offering 3 apples to the buyer to take care of those things. Your buyer brokerage agreement should say, well, you know, you owe me 2 apples unless or except if the seller of the property is going to pay you compensation that exceeds that amount, in which case then our compensation is changed accordingly. Something to that effect that they need an attorney to write up, not me. But our old buyer broker agreements actually have language to that.
Want to be careful there. Because again, this is not approved settlement, but that's one of those gray areas because the
Yep.
settlement agreement of that 108 pages states that we cannot receive compensation greater than that is written in the buyer's agency agreement. So that's still a little bit of unknown. And Alexis, right now we're writing those that we will accept either what is being offered or here is my fee. But the settlement seems to speak directly to that you cannot receive more than you have written into your representation agreement.
Okay, let's go to a few more of these scenarios. What are you currently? I'm just going to read this one straightforward. This is from Jeff Sislow, for those who know him. Ideas on how offers of compensation can be offered so that listing agents don't get dozens of calls from selling agents, call centers, or others. Who wants that one?
I would say use your seller concession place in MLS because the seller can offer compensation to the buyer. You can put that, I would believe, in your agent notes that this seller is going to offer $5,000 to the buyer to use towards closing costs or anything that they choose to do with it. That is not compensation to the agent. That is the seller compensation or the seller concession, I would use that word, to the buyer directly. So I believe that we can still have sellers do concessions. They can pay closing costs or anything they want to do, as long as we're not saying it goes to the selling company or the selling agent.
Ron?
I was on a webinar. I've been on a bunch of them last week or so, but the gentleman who spoke was actually an attorney from California, who's tied into both the CRMLS and the California and local California real estate association, and he said that they actually did some data that showed that they're using the field, right, a concession field. And they're actually really using that as the new way to be able to communicate a lot of this information. And they're suggesting, and believe it or not, he looked at a certain number of them, and believe it or not, the number was 50% of folks were starting to use that field more effectively now. So they're the associations are really trying to educate and say, if you can't do this, here's where we should switch to. And 50% is a pretty big number. So I felt pretty good that people are starting to see that here's how we need to switch to. So I thought that was interesting.
We've got
Richard.
that old melody in real estate of RDR. Realtors don't read. And Ron, you're correct that we have to start looking at those listings. We need to start reading every part of it. And it's imperative right now that we get started now and not wait until mid-July.
I agree with that too. Yeah.
Well, my thought too, Amy, is, guess what? These realtors are going to have to learn to communicate. I am so sorry. But, when I got a license back, when we were chiseling contracts out on stone and the Flintstones were around, we really and truly picked up the phone and talked to each other. Go figure, they're gonna have to do that. And the listing agent's gonna have to be bothered to take the phone call. That's what you get paid for. Communicate with somebody who might have a buyer out there, and you're getting paid to do this. This business of text and everything and not talking to anybody's got to stop. And so I welcome anybody that wants to call me about anything on any of my listings, including how big the toilet is. I mean, it doesn't make any difference. My job is to speak to those people, and it is not to figure out how I can do less to earn more. So sorry about that, Casey.
And to your point, there's no excuse if you're small, you work yourself, or if you're gigantic, somebody needs to pick up that phone, answer it, call you back. There's no excuse because I'm too small, I'm too big, whatever. To her point, finger on the pulse, you better know what's going on in your business. So I agree with you 100%. 100%.
We've got questions about what if we were to lean into the approach from commercial brokers? I don't know that any of you want to speak to this. Adding something like broker protected in the MLS. Ron, you want to speak to that?
Well, I want to speak to the fact that everybody's got their own initiative and agenda, right? And just right out there, you got to know that there's some pretty big organizations like CoStar who are phenomenal, huge companies, but CoStar is the owner of the quote unquote MLS type of situation on commercial real estate, right? So they have a track record for years of how they are able to do it on the commercial side. So I think that we need to really be careful as we're looking at stuff that commercial real estate, if you look at that as a model over the last several decades, and I talked to some people that are very successful on that side, it is a model that's worked for years, and CoStar is one of those players. So it can work because commercial and CoStar and those have proven that it is, and there's different ways that they get properties out different than just the pure MLS. So there's different models that have played successfully across just residential, right? And we need to make sure that we're very clear on what they are, what they look like, and how they've been able to do business in your market. Go find somebody who's one of the most successful on the commercial side and go ask them, how does yours work? Because I think the information you'll find about how other, industries that really are very similar but different than ours actually run similar but different, right? I think that's important to know.
Absolutely. Lots of questions, several questions around, since we brought up the disparity in what you sign on the buyer broker's agreement versus what the seller might pay. Several suggestions around an amendment or an addendum to adjust on a specific offer. Was there any conversation about that, Leslie? So you're working with the buyer, you agreed to however many apples, and now there's an opportunity on the table for that buyer representative to be professionally compensated at a higher number of apples. Do you amend your buyer agency agreement? Does it go into the purchase agreement? Where does that get handled?
I haven't heard anything about that particular subject matter, but keep in mind, anytime there is change, no matter what it is, whether you like it or you don't, we have to adapt, and there will always, always be unintended consequences. There are going to be times when you're going to go on an appointment and go, oh gosh, what do I do now? And that will be something we'll have to work on and figure out how we all do it. So it'll keep coming, and keep getting educated and learning what is going on, and make sure you don't listen to all the noise out there, because there's a lot of noise that isn't true. And there are people who have no clue what they're doing, no clue what they're saying. And like I said, I wonder how some people got a real estate license based on just the questions they're asking. It's very concerning. So make sure that you're listening to the right noise, not the ones that are going to send you down the wrong path.
That is excellent input, Leslie. I have a favor to ask. I know I asked you all to commit to an hour. We already gobbled up that hour. How are you guys for time? Are you willing to go over just a little bit to get into some of these scenarios? And if you need to leave, I totally understand.
I'm all right.
I'm okay.
God bless you all. I love you for so many reasons. There are questions. I'm just going to hit a couple of these quick. Are you guys aware CoStar bought homes.com? I think everybody knows that happened some time ago. Ron could do a whole webinar just talking about that. So we're not going to get into that today. Lots of questions about the logic or psychology behind the decision made. Again, we're not attorneys, so we're not going to sit here and discuss, you know, guys, if this goes through, it goes through. We don't get an opportunity to say we don't think this was a good idea or that was a good idea. We are going to navigate what is and what may be. Richard.
And Leslie will speak about it in a few minutes, but the data that has been put out on NAR, there's a NAR Settlement FAQ on their website, and that goes into some of that detail, why they settled, why they didn't continue fighting it. We don't have time to get into that right now, but there's some great material out there, and Leslie will bring that to our attention, and a great place for people to go to get some of that information.
Yes, Alexis.
So I'd like to address RPAC for a moment. In answer to
How
this,
many of you are RPAC contributors? Ron, I don't think you're an active realtor anymore, but all three of you guys. Okay.
we're all
And
presidents.
several raised hands on here.
Amy,
Leslie, let's
the
go
three
ahead.
of us, the three of us are at the highest level. We're on at President's Circle. So what I want to say is this: because we are members of the National Association of Realtors, they worked very hard and diligently to give us as much protection as they possibly could do so. Those people who have licenses and are not members of NAR are going to still be subject to lawsuits if this is approved. We're not. So why contribute to RPAC? For those of you who don't know, that's a Realtor Political Action Committee. Why contribute? Because that gives us money from the NAR level to hire people to lobby for us in DC to stop the knuckleheads from putting taxes on our commissions or our real professional fees, to stop them from taxing the buyers and the sellers. A lot of the rules that we have to play with right now are a result of NAR going to Congress and saying, guess what? We got 1.5 million members. They have spouses, significant others, and kids that can vote, grandma and grandpa and ancillary family members. And so we've got a lot of votes here. So don't take away the income tax deduction for the purchaser who's getting a mortgage. Things that they've been trying to do to work against the real estate industry are made possible, or stopped, I should say, through our RPAC. And all they ask locally is that you contribute $25. People, come on. You know, I mean, and then all this talk about not belonging to your association, not belonging to the National Association of Realtors. I don't want to have an operation from a doctor who won't belong to the American Medical Society. I don't want to use an attorney who doesn't belong to the Bar Association because they're not regulated. And so I want to be a member of an association or society that has rules, regulations, and benefits all of us. So I want you, when you are saying you won't give a nickel, you won't give a dime, whatever, you don't want to join NAR, do me a favor, just hang up your license and go away. Go do something that you think you are good at, because if you don't want to become a member of the society where you intend to make this your profession and earn a living, then you don't need to be working in our profession. You need to at least pay the minimum to RPAC. And some of you out there are making millions of dollars selling real estate and investing zero back into those people who protect you. Now I'm off my soapbox.
No, I'll do a little.
Ron, chime in, and then we need to get to Leslie.
Yeah, that's fine. But here's what I'm going to tell you. So it depends upon who you're talking to. And Alexis, I think you're talking to real estate agents and the masses in the street, and I think you're correct. However, When you start getting stuff from the head of different franchises that say it's okay that you could do this but not be a member. So again, you got to take a look at now. Okay, I'm at 10,000 feet. So if leadership is important, right, then you got to take a look at then why are some of the major brands saying it's okay from this brand or that brand that you don't have to, or you can be a part of our franchise and not be a member. So I still think it goes up the food chain to say what is it coming from the head of some of these major franchises and things as well, and not just the little guy in the street. So there's some stuff that needs to be addressed here as well as here, right? So I don't disagree with you, but I think there's other conversations that need to be had.
Yeah, and a couple of people asked earlier, Ron, just about our mortgage title. Are they being proactive as well as the real estate agent side of this to educate their practitioners on what they need to be doing?
Can I be honest and take that one? I love this one.
Yeah.
So the answer from my perspective is absolutely not, right? And I would tell you, here's I'm going to get way out there, right? Over the years, right? People have come to top agents with either one of two things: a sack of money or some value, right? There's two things they usually come with, right? And if you don't have any value, sack of money is easiest and quickest because I got nothing to give you a share, right? I tell you, in the market to come, right, the sack of money thing is going away almost completely, because whether it be title legally or because mortgage, they're not making a lot of money on the originations anymore, right? So there's not the sack of money that used to be available. So you have got to align yourself with folks that have value, right? Value to you, value to your business. And they need to figure out both title, both escrow, mortgage, closing, however you do it, but they've got to look at their unique value proposition. And they need to say, if I'm talking to a single agent, a team, or whatever, what is my value proposition? And they need to be really clear in what they have to offer, and it's got to be substantial. And the broker that says I have a preferred partner, it's fine, but the preferred partner has got to have great value to allow agents to do more business, buy side or sell side. So there's my soapbox, right? You got to work with good people that have great value, and I am dedicated to work with more folks in both those areas, mortgage and title, to make sure that I can assist them from what I know.
All right, that is fantastic input. Leslie, I really would like you to speak to, as we discussed it on our planning session, we referred to it as why associations matter. Can we speak to that?
Sure. First of all, you are a member of the largest trade association in the world, and a lot of things that get done with the National Association of Realtors happen while you're sleeping, or you're out listing and selling real estate, and you don't even know a lot of the things that are done behind the scenes at your local, state, and national level that we either pass or defeat in our favor. So I'm from Texas, and we've had tax on commissions. We've had transfer fees, which I know some of you have. We do not in Texas. We were able to beat that. We had tax on our cars, an additional tax. And there's a whole list of things that we have fought and defeated in our favor. When I look at NAR, there are so many things that the National Association of Realtors has done. But instead of going into a lot of it, I'm just going to tell you to go to NAR.realtor. There's no .com, no .net, it's .realtor. It is our own domain. We also have .real estate. So keep in mind that the PPP, which was the payment protection plan that was received by many realtors, was the first time in the history of our country that independent contractors received a stimulus. And that is due to the fact of our lobbying efforts from Washington, D.C., and the amazing team that NAR has put together. Keep in mind also that there are a slew of other things that NAR has fought and fought and fought for us, including the transfer fees, 1031s, I mean, there's so many of them. Global is a huge thing with NAR. We have approximately 110 bilateral agreements with approximately 80 countries that are members of the National Association of Realtors, and they also call themselves realtors. I want to tell you too, the three options that we had. And keep in mind that we worked on a settlement before, during, and after the trial. So it didn't just happen a week ago last Friday on March the 15th. The three options were that we could appeal. While NAR, we felt that we would be very successful, we would have had to post a $5.4 billion bond that could have sent us into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. We don't have the resources to do that. Our second option was if we went on the appeal, all of our members, brokers, associations, and MLSs in copycat lawsuits would still be vulnerable, having to defend their cases, which could lead them to bankruptcy. And keep in mind, we have about 1,200 associations in the country, including local and state. The settlement had two parts: financial and rules. The financial piece is $418 million settlement to be paid over 4 years. The rules prohibit offer of compensation on MLS and written agreements when working with representing buyers. So these are opportunities for you to, again, share with your clients your value, what you bring to the table as a realtor. We are fighting 20 lawsuits, 17 are seller, 2 are buyer, 1 is the DOJ. Normally, that, by the way, is the most we've ever fought in our 116-year history. So that's a lot of lawsuits to be dealing with. One thing that I will tell you that we were told by our chief legal officer, Katie Johnson, and I know she was going by memory, so this is not set in stone, but there were 8 jurors who decided our fate for our profession. 4 of them were homeowners. 2 of them used a realtor. 1 bought a FSBO, 1 bought a new home. So 25% of the jurors bought a home through a realtor, and 100% of them decided the future of our profession. So I think that's important to note. Also, I highly encourage you, if you have not, go to nar.realtor and look around. See what's available to you. There are a lot of member benefits. I was joking with this group when we had our prep session last Friday that somebody called me one day and said, "Hey, did you get your rental car through the NAR site?" And I go, "Oh no, I need to do that." And they said, "I just saved $204 on my rental car." Well, there's your dues, folks. And that's just one little bitty tiny benefit that we have at the National Association of Realtors. So I highly recommend that you check out the websites that I know Amy and Tammy were putting up for us, but facts.realtor, realestateCommissionFacts.com, thedifference.realtor, which will help you in telling your difference to your buyers and sellers. That's who we are, .realtor. There's also 179 things that agents do to get to the closing table. And that's important that you go to nar.realtor and print that out, memorize it, learn what you do, share it. There's nothing wrong with that. And for those of you who are not using Realtor Property Resource, it's narrpr.com, but that is one of your #1 benefits as a member of the National Association of Realtors, and it costs you a whopping $13.50 a year. And I can assure you, if you're not using it, your competitors are. And if you see what RPR does, you will never not use it again. So I highly recommend that you check that out. But just keep in mind that there are a lot of people that work behind the scenes volunteering, like I do, and like many people do at the local, state, and national level, to make sure that it's not just for us as realtors, but it's for private property rights and home ownership. So it's not just about realtors in our back pocket. It has so much to do with so much more than that. So please go to nar.realtor and check it out. Thanks.
Leslie, thank you so much for that. There are going to continue to be a lot of things unfolding as we move through this. And our goal at Star Power is just to continue to bring the professional expert perspective, the facts and the resources. Several of you in the Q&A asked about additional webinars. As we see there's a need for that, we'll certainly do that. This will always be free. And we're also posting this on our YouTube channel, which is Real Estate Star Power, so that you can go back, listen to it again, share it with other people. And as we do other webinars, we'll post those there as well. That just makes sense to me in terms of keeping you guys on top of what's going on. Specifically, for those of you who aren't members of our Star Power Club, you might want to look at doing that. In April, we're going to have, I believe, 7 or 8 stars in studio to be interviewed, and we're going to take that time to do a separate additional interview on listing and buyer presentation, how you communicate with your sellers and how you communicate with your buyers for what's in their best interest. And that'll be available through the club. In addition, I know every single one of the panelists here is going to be with us at the Star Power Annual Conference, which is July 25th through the 27th in Nashville, Tennessee. And we had already planned a session on buyer counseling. We had already planned a general session on the future of real estate, which Leslie has agreed to be a part of. Alexis and Richard will be a part of the buyer counseling. We've added a session on counseling your sellers in relation to this shift. So all of those things will be available to you. We'd love to have you with us in Nashville, as Richard mentioned, unsolicited at the beginning of this whole recording of the Zoom, that the collaboration that happens between the people in this family, and we are a family, is something that you really should take advantage of and make part of your life. We all get together at our RRC celebration, and we all get together at the Star Power Annual Conference, and it's a great opportunity twice a year to do that and stay on the forefront. Any final thoughts that any of you have? Oh, I was supposed to mention, we do have a Buyer Mastery University and a Listing Mastery University. We will be going over specific scripts and dialogues in both of those, as well as having available a listing presentation book, an updated one that addresses how compensation works in this industry, as well as a buyer during the Buyer Mastery. So those dates, if you want to jot them down, we just got the dates firm, is October 24th and 25th. And that is in Phoenix. I know Lisa Murray's on the call. She'll be ecstatic. The Buyer Mastery will be here in our hometown of Denver, Colorado, October 31st and November the 1st. If that's something that's of interest to you, we'll be getting those updated on the website. We do only have, I think, capacity for 50 in each of those. So conference 500, we're about halfway there and would love to have you. Final closing thoughts from each of you. Who would like to go first?
I will. I want to reinforce what Leslie said. And while we were in this podcast today, NAR just sent out another reminder that the facts.realtor will give you a 13-page FAQ summary so that you don't have to read the 108-page settlement letter. It's well worth taking time to print out those 12 pages, to read those pages, and truly become educated from the source. And get your information from people that you trust, that can validate the information that is imperative for us to make change. This is not a game changer, folks. This is change in the industry, and it's the only thing that is constant is change. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, Richard. Ron?
I'll go next. Couple different things. I was listening to all the things that Star Power offers. One, I think, needs to be everybody on this panel, and a lot of the stars that have been around for a long time, been in business. I would almost tell you 100%, maybe 98%, that the relationships they have with their affiliate partners are strong, and they've used a lot of the same people for their careers. right? I did. And I think to let folks see what a great partnership looks like, to watch that communication between partners together. How do those communications sound and look and feel? I think you should expand so that people can see, when I don't care, a title rep, a service person. In the old days, it was Cheese Whiz on a cracker. Nobody even remembers what Cheese Whiz is anymore, probably. But anyway, it wasn't of great value, and it wasn't even that tasty. But however, now it's got to be something of great value, and the dialogue to listen to mortgage. When I was calling this week, I talked to agents, brokers, high-end, low-end mortgage people, because 50% of the questions were about first-time home buyers. What do I do in VA and government loans and financing? And so those questions are very important, and we need to bring in the mortgage professionals to answer those questions together with us as a group. That's what I would tell you. I think it's very important to bring us all together so we can all talk as a bigger group as well.
Leslie or Alexis, what do you want to say?
I'll just
think
tell you that once again, go to NAR.Realtor. Our president, Kevin Sears, and our chief legal officer, Katie Johnson, just did another video. They're continually updating us on everything that is going on. So don't tell us that you're not in the know. Go to NAR.Realtor and see and get the latest updates and learn and educate yourself from the people who do know what's going on. Thanks.
Thanks, Leslie. Alexis?
That's a great point from everybody, particularly what Leslie said. It is our job to make sure that the buyers and sellers in our marketplace are clear on what's going on and not just listen to what's being said on the news media, because they take everything and hype it up to where, if you gave a kid a lollipop, now suddenly you're a pedophile. So understand that that's how they change the way things happen. And so you need to educate people in your local marketplace as to how things really are. And by having those facts and answers from NAR is a great way. Also, I want to say, be kind to each other. We're talking about buyers and sellers as clients, but I tell you what, my fellow realtors in the marketplace are people I'm going to work with long after the buyer and seller have been satisfied with whatever their particular housing wants and needs are. Be kind to each other. Stop this backbiting and fighting amongst each other, because this is what's caused us to get where we are today. Understand, as Richard said, change is inevitable. In the 46 years that I've been in real estate, oh my God, what kind of change we have had. This old girl's going to be 80 this year. I had to learn technology when it first came out, and thank God I was younger, because I don't know what 80-year-olds do today. But change is inevitable. Something's always going to change. So quit fighting it and join it, and be happy that you can make the change and move on. It's for the best of our industry in some way, shape, form, or fashion. We don't know it today, but we'll know it later. And I want to leave some thoughts for you. And I've posted these online, but I really like them. 8 things to remember when going through tough times. Everything can and will change. You've overcome challenges before. This isn't the first time. It's a learning experience. Not getting what you want could also be a blessing. Who wants to work with all those knuckleheads out there? Allow yourself to have some fun. Being kind to yourself is the best medicine. Other people's negativity isn't worth worrying about, and there's always something to be thankful for. And I want us to get to that point where we are thankful for what we have, because all of us have been somewhere else when we didn't have the opportunities we have today. We didn't have the comfort that we have today. We didn't have good health, perhaps. We had trying times. God knows I have. That Virginia Slims commercial, "I've come a long way, baby," was written for me because I was a waitress for $1 an hour plus tips when the children's dad took off, no child support, no alimony. And where I am today is lightning years away. Be thankful for who you are and what you have. And I'm thankful for all these people on this webinar, and for Star Power for jumping up immediately and getting on this, which is what they do. They're at the forefront of what's happening in real estate, not behind the times. And so I thank you all for putting up with me.
Well, what was I thinking letting Alexis go last? Because that means I have to talk after her. She said everything. What Alexis said. I just want to thank the four of you for your intense dedication to this industry in all ways, and your wonderful support of Star Power and this industry as a whole. You guys, you show up time and time again, and we are eternally grateful for that. As I stated, we will continue to monitor whether there's a need for additional webinars. There probably will be. Somebody asked about the discount code they saw in the club. It's SP as in Star Power, the word love, and the number 50, SP Love 50. You can use that not only on club, but you can use it on conference if you prefer to get a $50 discount. I want to just say from my heart, we're all in this industry because we love helping people realize one of the most profound opportunities of the American dream, which is home ownership. So let's continue to keep our focus on elevating our industry for the benefit of those people. And like Alexis said, be kind. Let's take care of each other. We can spend all of our energy in outrage and disappointment. We can curl up in the corner and suck our thumbs, but I think the people that are here on this call realize we've got a job to do, and that hasn't changed. So let's continue to be the professionals that we are. Let's lift each other up. And I'm just grateful, and we'll be back when we need to be back. Thanks to all of you. If you didn't get a specific question answered and you want follow-up, please reach out to us. We'll do our best to do that. And feel free to share this with anybody. See the replay as much as you want. Take care, everyone. God bless, and we'll see you all very soon.
Bye-bye.